So we are going to assemble a Beckett AFG burner, and the first piece we're installing is the air tube combination. It has the air tube and the fixed mounting flange. You need 4 screws to install it, 2 at the top and an additional 2 on the side. You'll notice this setup isn't on a mounting board like the students will have. It does make it a little trickier to assemble it. This is what it would be like if you had to assemble it for yourself out in the field. It's important to get your right screws. There are lots of screws in this assembly. Most of them are different from one another. You've got to check your lengths and your thread count to make sure that you're using the right screw in the right location. There, we got that on, and the next piece we're going to install is the retention head. The retention head has 2 screws on either side. You'll notice the little holes at the top and the bottom. Those little holes are for draining out excess oil and finish it collect in the air tube. Those are fine thread with a Phillips head. The size of the retention head is stamped right on the head. I believe that one is an F0 head. The 0 indicates the size of the air slots around the head itself, and I'm now installing the flange gasket. Anytime you dismount a burner from an appliance, you're going to want to make sure that you have a replacement gasket, because they quite often get damaged when they're removed from the furnace. Moving on, we're going to install the air band. The air band is for coarse air adjustment, and if you'll notice the arrow indicated by a sticker, you should install that at the 0 mark so that everything's going to be lined up in the correct starting position. And then install the air shutter, which is for fine air adjustment. And you'll notice here you also want to install it to the 0 setting. That way you'll make sure that your screw holes for mounting your pump aren't being obstructed by the air shutter. 2 5/16 head screws to secure the air shutter. Okay, next we're going to install the fuel pump. Take that back. We're going to install the air guide. The air guide goes against the housing on the air shutter side. It takes 2 small screws. The notes from the factory, normally you wouldn't be removing this from the burner. This is a complete disassembly to familiarize students with the various components of the burner. This is a long screw through the housing and into the mounting bracket on the air guide. Most of our burners have air bells on them, which is a larger piece of plastic. Okay, our clean cut pump. Two bolts. with a quarter-inch head, also with the slotted. Tighten them both down. Gonna plug in the cord set for the delayed oil valve, thread it through the housing, and we're just going to tuck them inside the housing for now because we don't have the electrical junction box installed yet. And there is a clip to secure it, and it's also going to create less air loss with that clip installed. Okay, so let's install the blower wheel. Make sure you line up your Allen key surface with the flat of the shaft, and make sure that you don't leave it flat against the housing of the burner motor. Make sure you've got some clearance underneath it. Don't pull it up too high because then you won't have clearance against the housing on the other side of the blower wheel. Tighten it securely. I'm going to install the coupler. I like to put it on the pump side first. Turn it so that the drive surface of the coupler is facing at 12 o'clock. Do the same with the shaft for the burner motor. And that way you will be able to easily line the two up. You can look in the top to see how things are going. And if you get it right, slide and snaps right into place. All you have to do is tighten down your fasteners. Those are PSC motors. They do have the capacitor already mounted on the side of it. Check both of them, make sure they're snug. These motors turn at 3450 RPMs. They turn your fan and your pump. Install the junction box. Thread the burner motor leads into the junction box, the neutral and then the power wire, and the same with the delayed oil valve, the neutral and the power wire. Okay, get ready to install the ignition transformer. Make sure that you do this from the open position. If you do it from the closed position, you may not get your screws in right, and especially if you pick your wrong screws, you'll end up just screwing it shut and you won't be able to open it because those are particular heads on those screws that will fit through the cutouts on the top of the transformer to allow the motor to open, or the transformer to open. I'm going to install the quetzal assembly. It slides into the bracket. Make sure it's secure. Again, thread your leads into the junction box. Close it. Now tighten it down. 5/16. You don't have to remove those all the way. As you see, they have a wing on them, so you don't have to take the screws all the way out. Install the CAD cells. The CAD cells are marked separately. The wiring is very easy on the R7184. They're color-coded. All your neutrals go to line 2. Just install the lead for the transformer and the neutral for the transformer. Delayed oil valve is purple. Attach the lead there and the neutral. And don't forget the burner motor. Thread it into the box. There we go. Now we got enough slack. Orange for the burner motor lead and a neutral, and the two remaining white and black leads that you see are for the power coming into the primary control from your limit. So mount the box with the thermostat control screws facing towards you, and use the 2 screws to secure the box. Okay, we have not installed our ignition assembly yet. Here we have a disassembled ignition assembly, reassembled, installing the nozzle, noting that you're only holding on. You don't want to get your fingers onto the nozzle orifice or the filter, and because even just the oils from your fingers can cause problems for the nozzle. 7/16 and a 5/8 to secure the nozzle. It wants to be snug and oil tight. You don't want to wrench on it too hard and stretch the brass nozzle adapter. Here's the static plate. One side has the little tab turned up, the other side you screw to the electrode holder, 1/4 inch. There we go. And install the electrodes. Just going to set them in place. And once I've done that, I'm going to very roughly line them up. And when I've got them roughly lined up, I'm going to snug them down a bit. Not so tight that I can't still adjust them, because I need to make my final adjustment. And I'll be doing that with the T-bar. Okay, get the T-bar. Here's the T-bar, pointing out the AC settings, and that it's the 7/16 standard setting for the AFG. Here's checking the, first was checking the height and the forward, and this is checking the gap between the electrodes. And it's not quite where I want it yet. So I'm making some small adjustments. See how I'm holding the electrodes ahead of the electrode holder? Stabilizes it, recheck the gap and the distance forward and the height from the nozzle orifice to the tips. Hits on the AC hatch marks. I always have my thumb over the oil tube because I don't want to drip oil. And a little bit of a twist. Get it in line, and in it goes. So missing is the escutcheon plate, which I'm going to install. The escutcheon plate allows for adjustment of the Z dimension. The Z dimension is important because it is the distance the nozzle is away from the head of the retention head. If you get that wrong, you're going to run into impingement problems right on the head. This is something, if you get an assembled burner right out of the box, before you mount it on a furnace, you're going to want to check the Z dimension as well as the ignition setup. I wouldn't ever trust factory setup. You want to check it for yourself. And a thumb screw to tighten it down and install the high pressure oil line. 7/16 flared nuts. And I'm holding the electrode assembly down so it doesn't pivot up while I'm tightening the 7/16 nut. Make sure both ends are tight or you'll be wearing oil. Close it up and tighten your tabs down. So we'll check our Z dimension with our T-bar. Once we have a look around, make sure all the screws are in the right place, everything's tightened down, everything is as it should be. Okay, Z dimension. The flat goes against the nozzle and the angled part goes against the retention head, and it should be a snug fit, and if required you would slide your escutcheon plate forward to make sure that the nozzle was in the right position. Looks good. Thanks. I hope you find this useful for review and preview when it comes to your turn to assemble and disassemble the burners in lab. Thanks.